And with this peace deal, every province required will return to our Chinese puppet. Click done. There we go. All of the Chinese cores have been returned to our Portuguese China with its capital in Macau. Now, you'll note I misclicked somewhere, and this province is mine instead of my vassals. And it's a bitch to give back to them. You can either release this nation, then declare war on them, and then give the territory to your puppet. It works. Or take the smart approach and just do it right the first time. But first, if you like this kind of video and want to see more of it, hit me in the comments, tell me what guides you want to see next, leave a like, consider subscribing. Now, on to the video. Welcome back folks, Bittersteel here with another guide for Hearts of Iron 4. Today, we're taking another look at Portugal, specifically the horrible achievement Macau My Day. First order of business, we're just going to group up the military. Just select all of our units, it should be about 18 of them. And we're going to park them on the tile beneath Bissau. Why not on the port? Because the port is a jungle tile and the tile below it is a forest tile, meaning there's less attrition and no events for making your generals sick. Speaking of generals, just assign them your best general, give them a field marshal. That is most of the military sorted. Second step, you're going to be setting up some naval invasions. Just one naval invasion for every coastal victory point that Brazil has, except for Rio de Janeiro. Trust me, it will all be clear soon. Just go with it. So in total, that should be 7 naval invasions. One for each victory tile on the coast that Brazil has, except for Rio de Janeiro here. Don't worry about it. This is where our future allies will spawn, so we don't need to invade that. The one exception is the Porto Alegre to the south. We are going to hit the tile above the victory point and then push down with our cavalry unit. Because of the distribution of the naval tiles here, the southern tile, the Georgia Sea, is out of our naval range, while the South Central Atlantic isn't. So it's just a bit of shenanigans, doesn't really matter. Cavalry is quick enough. But that is our military sorted. Just set them to exercising for now. Next step, research. We only have the 2 slots, so we are going to be focusing on the electronic engineering and industry branches until we catch up with research. Then we'll be switching between infantry equipment, fighters, support companies and doctrines as the need arises and technology becomes ahead of time. We'll also be getting ourselves a few more research slots to make the process a little easier. Now, I'm not constantly going to repeating what research you should be doing when. The general idea is to work on your industry and your electronic engineering first, get those up to date, then work on either your infantry equipment if that's lagging behind, or your artillery, maybe some fighters. It's a personal choice. You should have enough time to get everything up to date by the time we are ready to rumble. Speaking of focuses, we're going to be starting out with Estado Novo. Construction now. We're going to be building 4 civilian factories, 2 in each of our spare provinces. Any construction after these are done is going to be military factories, and try to prioritize building them in your highest infrastructure provinces. That way they are constructed faster. Our dockyards, we have to build a few convoys and the rest of them can go to submarines. And our military production, we're going to add on some towed artillery factories in there, and then flesh out the rest of our production. And let's finish up with transport planes for our paratrooper cheese in the future. As we get more military factories through conquests and the absorption of Brazil, this will change a bit, but the general idea is to just keep a healthy stockpile of all the stuff you'll need to equip your army. Build transport planes until you have roughly 15 of them, and then get rid of the production line and throw those towards other more useful aircraft like fighters. Speaking of fighters, once you have researched fighters or are about to research fighter ones, just start producing aircraft. Start producing a lot of them, like 5 or maybe even 10 factories on it. Airplanes are just really good for that air superiority. Now for trade, we will be trading a lot, and we'll be trading with our good friend Senor Mustache. Where are you? Here we go. Senor Mustache is going to give us a lot of our good stuff. We're going to be sucking up to the Germans. They'll be our best friends very soon. Now with all that done, the setup is complete. We just need to set the timer to speed 4 and kick things off. The fleet can also exercise, same for your aircraft, just pilot exercises. You'll notice we'll be running out of fuel quickly as well. Just get a few barrels of oil from our good friend Uncle Sam to keep your navy in supply. Now with Estado Novo completed, we will be rushing towards a royal wedding and then quickly go down all the way to the Empire of Brazil. So you'll be doing a royal wedding, the return of Duarte, monarchist uprising in Brazil, followed by the Empire of Brazil. Once we finish the Empire of Brazil, a monarchist uprising will fire in Brazil and we'll be there to help them out. Now for political power, we'll get the free trade law first, because as Portugal, we are sitting on more tungsten than we could ever need. So that's our first investment. And for our follow-ups, we will be getting the traditional theorist, once he's available to us, followed by the financial expert, and then as a third person to round that out will be the military theorist. So these will be the next 3 investments we'll make. As for our industry, we'll be going dispersed, simply the best choice for a country like Portugal. Now that we're preparing our monarchist uprising in Brazil, consider deploying your navy in such a way that they'll actually be of any use. So they'll have to secure the naval invasions going on off the Brazilian shorelines. Otherwise, our troops won't even move. And with that focus done, the integralists and the empire loyalists in Brazil have gone to war. Now, we are going to be supporting the Empire of Brazil, naturally. So to do that, just take our 11 troops that we're not using in naval invasions and simply ferry them across to Rio de Janeiro to man the front lines and fire off our naval invasions. Once they all hit, we should be able to knock out the integralists in record time. That should net us a nice monarchist Brazil. Speaking of monarchist, we're going to be working on our own monarchism. So let's go down, promote the monarchist cause, followed by restoration of the monarchy, and finally, the kingdom reunited, which would see us absorb Brazil and its industry, but more importantly, its massive manpower pool. Let's get right on that. And in just a few short days, we have helped the Empire of Brazil re-establish itself. Now with Brazil in the bag, we will be focusing on building our industry and military. So for focuses, we are first going to be annexing Brazil through the Kingdom Reunited. Now, somewhere in the mid-1937, you will start getting pop-ups for provisional governments. You can deny all of them, really, especially the African ones. They are not ready yet, we want that manpower. But the provisional government of China, they have our blessing because we need them for the achievement. And with our third investment, the military theorist, so we can get some military experience to alter our templates. Speaking of military experience, our next 100 political power is going to be invested in Japan. So when Japan kicks off its war with China, improve your relations with them, and as soon as they'll allow, send an attaché for some free experience that will help tremendously in getting our doctrines up to speed, as well as changing out our templates. There we go. Brazil accepts the unification. With Brazil in the bag, it's time we focus on building up our industry and our military. Now, as for focuses from this point on until about the war with the Allies, we will be working on the industry and army reorganization branches. The best order to do these in is to start with the public works, follow up with Instituto Superior Técnico, OGME, Portuguese artillery, then the other research slot from the military research facilities, then we'll be heading into OGMA, light aircraft focus, army reorganization and metropolitan army, and finally standardization. This path will get us a nice ramp up of military industry and some good research bonuses, research slots, and we won't risk having to go to war with an army that's still in a sad state. Production-wise, we're going to keep pumping out towed artillery, infantry equipment, and support equipment, and we can start adding some fighters into the mix as well. These will prove very valuable in the future. We'll also be reorganizing our military somewhat, dividing them into 2 armies. One army will be comprised of all of the infantry, while we will put the cavalry in a separate army. We'll be using the cavalry mostly to be pushing into gaps or overrunning withdrawing divisions. Now in future we will be working towards filling out our infantry army with a standard 7-2 template. To that end, we will be getting us some more army experience, as I explained through the trick with Japan. We'll be filling up a second army of 24 divisions with cavalry. We'll be altering their template as well, so it's 10 width and has at least decent. And then finally, we will get around 6 more infantry divisions that will service us as port guards in case the UK decides to naval invade us. So we will be recruiting these units with a high priority. There, this production should do. Just set both of these to high priority and force deploy them as soon as they're ready. They'll be exercising anyway. And with all this done, we will pretty much be waiting for the Second World War to kick off, so world tension rises high enough for us to actually fabricate some claims and go to war. Now, if you're keen on the mechanic and you feel you have the production or construction to spare, consider investing in an intelligence agency. It's not necessary, but it's a fun little gimmick to play around with. As for doctrines, the obvious choice is superior firepower. Now, having used this abundance of experience from the Japanese-Chinese conflict, we will be upgrading the Divisão de Infantaria, your basic infantry division, up to a standard 7-2 20 width template. And we will be changing our entire infantry army to this template. Same for the army that we have recruited with 6 infantry divisions in it. They will serve as coastal guards. As for the cavalry, just add 1 more cavalry division and they should be 10 width. Now, every time one of the many Chinas issues diplomatic protests, tell them to stuff it. We will send our attachés where we please. Having gotten another 150 political power, now is a good idea to ramp up to partial mobilization to prepare for the coming conflict. Now with 1938 rolling in, consider using this time to get ourselves paratrooper research. Once we finish the paratroopers, make a single battalion division of paratroopers, so they contain just 1 unit of paratroopers, and quickly train about 12 of those. We'll be using them as our ticket to the UK. When you start producing a few fighters, make them into these small 50 airplane wings and set them to pilot exercises. And every time 1 wing fills up, just click the duplicate air wings button and make another wing. It should automatically start training as well. And from now on, we'll be using the rest of our political power to get our army up to speed. We'll start out with the army logistics expert, followed by the infantry expert, artillery expert, and then the army offense expert. I also like to add on cavalry recon to my templates, and then in the future upgrading them to motorized. So I have some recon is really great for making your generals pick the right tactics in every battle. So with our paratroopers research, let's deploy a few of them, pick their default template, just remove these 2 units, so it's the smallest unit you can possibly have, train up roughly 12. 12 should be enough. Force deploy these as soon as they're ready. With that final step, what we have to do now is wait for World War II to fire while we go through our focus trees and adjust our production and construction to fit our needs, and once world tension reaches 50%, we can justify on the Allies.
A few moments later.
While you're building up for going to war with the Allies, consider moving a few of your troops over to the Brazilian part of your empire. 6 should be enough to hold, or at least slow down any enemy advances towards you from the Allied colonies in South America. Having fleshed out our military advisors, we can save up our next political power investment for war economy once we declare war on one of the allies. So for now, just hoard some political power until you're at war. With all of our relevant industrial focuses done, as well as the more important army focuses, We have two options here. We either take colonial assimilation and colonial army to get ourselves a bit of extra manpower, or we go for the industrial modernization and the new industry for some boosts to our economy. These are personal choices. So considering I am sitting on quite a heap of manpower without having really gone up a mobilization law, I'll simply go for the industry here. Another good political power investment is to get the light aircraft designer to make our next version of the fighter just that little bit better. And with war looming, organize your fleet in a few task forces so we have enough separate fleets to cover our troops moving across the ocean across about 3 sea zones. So that should be the Iberian coast, the Bay of Biscay, and the English Channel. Those should be enough.
One eternity later.
And with that, we have hit 50% world tension. It's time to justify a war goal on one of the allies and get ready to join in on the fun. Now, France or the UK doesn't really matter, either will do, but consider justifying for one of their Chinese provinces, making it a little cheaper to take in the peace deal. They are our primary reason for going to war after all.
Later.
There we go. We have finished the justification for conquering our French provinces. We're gonna declare war, join the Axis, and get busy. First thing we do is go to France, declare war. Second thing we do is go to our subjects and call them into the war as well, so we can give them territory at the conference table. They'll quickly be overrun, but they are irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Now we let some time pass, and Germany should be willing to let us into their faction. There you go, he asked to join their faction. And we are in the Axis with our access to the Axis guaranteed. We'll quickly move our troops over to France, maybe get a bit of action in there, some more participation along the way, but more importantly, we now have the ability to use their airports and their ports. And don't forget to go up to the war economy. Now, your economy is going to be a bit in shambles as the UK will start intercepting your convoys, so shipments of supplies may be hard to come by for a while, but this is not going to be a long war, so we can safely ignore that for now. With our navy on convoy escort, most of our ships should be able to actually reach the front lines. And as an extra measure, we're going to assign our entire air force to our infantry army and set them to air superiority and some close air support since we still have a few CAS here. Speaking of CAS, while we're at it, throw a few of those in there as well. And with that, let's see if our boys actually reach Germany safely. Don't forget that you still have some troops over near Brazil. That might be a good time to use them to either hold this line, or if you see opportunities, quickly push towards the French, English and Dutch ports to seize this territory as well. But that's not necessary. With our entire military safely transferring over to Germany, it's also safeguard the fleet. Their services will not be required for the rest of this conflict, so we can send them back home and guard the Iberian coast instead. Now, your cavalry and infantry you can now use to push into Paris, help capitulate France, but more importantly, build some more participation. Our paratroopers, however, have a different purpose. Going to deploy all of those transport planes we made, about 16, good, onto the closest airport to England. We're going to divide these into groups of 4 paratroopers. We're going to have 4 of them land on Dover itself. We're going to have another 4 land on the 2 tiles next to Dover, giving us a bit of a buffer in case the British army is quick to respond. And once France has been mopped up and our troops are ready to ferry across, we are going to fire those paratroopers. Britain is terrible at guarding its port, and Dover is usually unguarded. If in your playthroughs they do guard Dover, build a few more of these garbage airborne divisions and just paradrop on every port tile in reach of your transport planes. They are bound to miss at least one because they have sent their army far and wide across their empire to fight on all those different fronts. With France capitulated, now is the time to move all of our troops to ports close to Dover in preparation for our airborne invasion of the UK. As you can see, paradropping Dover without any problems whatsoever, so we'll immediately follow up with our entire military making the crossing as fast as we can. With our army landing, we'll make an aggressive push towards the line here between Liverpool and Hull once we reach this and take all of southern England, or well, England and Wales, the UK should be more inclined to capitulate. Now, with the main forces having landed and in position, it's time to set off these battle plans. Some micromanagement might be required if in your game the UK has a lot of troops in their home islands for some reason, but usually once your actual army lands, it's GG for the UK. As you can see, England barely has any troops on the home islands, and our army is just walking to the Liverpool Hull line. So there we go. With the United Kingdom knocked out, we can take all their stuff. Great. That concludes World War II rather quickly. Now, first things first, at the peace table, we will be taking these Chinese provinces from France and Britain and giving them to our vassal. And that's the first thing we're going to do. And now we have enough to satellite the British Raj, and our turn here. You can still take some of this land up here. And anything else you can take is pretty much gravy on top of, well, things. Doesn't really matter now. The most important thing, really, is to take the Chinese provinces as they're required for the achievement and try to put as much effort as you can into getting the British Raj. It will give you another avenue into China and a very large manpower pool to draw on. And with that peace deal done, it's time to reorganize our military. Let's get all the boys to Macau, get our cavalry in position as well. They're going to be helpful in pushing out. We can take these airborne divisions and change them into actual infantry units. We should have the equipment, and send them to the holdings as well. Now, anything we left behind in Brazil, we can convert into infantry divisions as well and send them over right away. And we're going to be justifying on our Chinese targets. Target Guangxi and China itself. Now, with all that sorted, we will be moving our entire military to our Chinese holdings. Let's also get some troops on the border with Xinjiang and Yunnan in the British Raj. And once our war goals are in, we will go to war with China and its warlords. We will quickly defeat them with Japan's help. Don't forget to get military access from Japan. This is very important for the further steps. Just get military access so we can order 66 them later. And after we defeat China in the peace conference, we will be denying Japan as much land as we can and as many puppets as we can. First, let's get our troops there so we can actually declare war.
One eternity later.
And with our war goal expiring May the 15th, let's just declare war now on China itself, and they should pull in the other warlords. Don't forget to pull in your Chinese puppet here as well, asking Japan for military access. Very important for future steps. And now, sadly, because we have so many troops on Guangxi's borders, they have decided not to join this war. So we are justifying on them manually, which will take another 60 days, unfortunately. Now, as for focuses, it doesn't really matter which path you choose from this point on, so it's entirely up to you. Every time you get these join war requests, keep denying them. You want as little interference from the other Axis powers as possible, otherwise they might end up taking stuff in the peace deal. We really don't want that. And with our justification on Huanxi complete, we can finally get ourselves involved in this war. So we're going to declare war and just get our Chinese vassal involved. And that's it. And now we shred some Chinese. As you can see, the Chinese military is no match for our well-trained and well-designed European divisions. This war is a walk in the park. And with China capitulating, that knocks out the entire front, and now it's just a matter of taking provinces and hoping that Japan doesn't mess things up too much. So let's get on to taking as much land as we can. When taking land, try to take land that's adjacent to one of the Japanese puppets, so you can set up front lines there, or deny Japan the opportunity to expand too much.
Eventually.
Now, with the peace deal concluded, you can see that China is a giant mess. Doesn't matter. Now, moving forward, we have two options. We either start a fair one-on-one war with Japan and fight this out to the last man, It's going to take a lot of manpower and equipment, but by this time we should be able to do this, especially with the vast manpower reserves from our Brazilian barrage, and our Porto-Brazilian China to draw on should not be too difficult. Alternatively, we execute Order 66, which means we take a full army of our finest troops and send them over to garrison Japan, place them in strategic locations like ports and victory points, and the rest of our army, we can train some more for this purpose if required, will be garrisoning Japan's puppets, well, their borders, which means we would put troops on the border with Xinjiang, Shaanxi, the Organized Government of China, the Yunnan Free State. Those would be the important ones. We put troops on those borders and push in hard the moment war is declared. We just have to take the one province. And from that point on, we will just have to delay Japan's troops on mainland China. Now, if we were to declare war on Japan straight up, or on one of their puppets straight up, all of our troops would be tossed out of Japan. We don't want that. So there's two ways to do this. Either you declare war on Siam, if they are in Japan's faction, of course, or you wait for them to join, but this could take a while and is not always guaranteed to happen. Or we declare war on either Germany or Italy, because they have guaranteed Japan, and Japan has guaranteed them via the Tripartite Pact. This will pull Japan into the war. However, because we do so indirectly, the troops we station in Japan will not be thrown off, meaning they'll be there and immediately start fighting the Japanese troops there. But we'll be at war with the Axis, and by God, they're a powerful Axis at this point. And with our justification on Italy done, all that's left is declare war on Italy. This should pull Japan in. Just be prepared for a wild ride, because we have the full force of the Axis to deal with now. As you can see, Japan has joined the war, but our entire military was already there. So with a little bit of micromanagement here, we should be able to quickly sort out the Japanese mainland. It might be necessary to declare war on Japan's puppets individually. That's not a big deal, is it? And don't forget to call your Chinese puppet into the war as well. Just make sure to not capitulate Japan too quickly. We want to be engaged with each one of its vassal states so as to draw them into the peace deal.
20 minutes later.
Now with Japan knocked out, we have ourselves a little peace conference. Ideally, the US will not have too much war participation. Now, as you can see in my game, they have about 400 because I was a bit slow on the draw and allowed them to get too much war participation through their campaign in Southeast Asia. You can alleviate this in your game by being quicker on declaring war on one of the Axis powers and getting the cheesy mechanics done that way. That way the US will not be involved almost at all. Now, if you do find them with a significant amount of war score, start out by taking all of the Chinese puppet states that belonged to Japan, so the US doesn't liberate any of them, and then take coastal territory. Now, when taking land, give all of it to your vassal. Make sure your Porto-Brazilian or your Portuguese China is involved in this war. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get them the territory. So, on to the peace conference. And with this peace deal, every province required will return to our Chinese puppet. Click done. There we go. All of the Chinese cores have been returned to our Portuguese China with its capital in Macau. Now, you'll note I misclicked somewhere, and this province is mine instead of my vassals, and it's a bitch to give back to them. You can either release this nation, then declare war on them, and then give the territory to your puppet. It works. Or take the smart approach and just do it right the first time. That's it for this video, folks. This has been me, Bittersteel. If you liked the video, leave a like, consider subscribing for more of these. Tell me what you want to see next in the comments. Always looking for some new ideas. If you didn't like it, that's cool. comments, leave a dislike, tell me what you didn't like in the comments. Always open for some more feedback. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.